Alright, hello everybody, my name is Alex Richards, and for my honors project I decided to do a React app, and basically it lets you, if you go on chess.com and you play any games, it basically allows you to enter your username here, and it will spit back a bunch of cool graphs, lets you see all your stats in depth. And just to give you guys a little live demo, we see I'm rated 515 in Bullet, which is like one of the time classes. It means you only get like a minute before the game's over, and I won and got +6, so if I update this graph here, we'll see this little tick here, which it updated the info correctly. So some of the technology I'm using to make this happen is the chess.com public API, which basically lets me pull in a bunch of JSON data, which I can run an algorithm through to display this data correctly. I'm using Firebase for a login system up here, using React Router to go between pages, and some different components that I imported, such as these graphs. These are victory charts. We got material table here, and then a lot of React Bootstrap for the rest of the site. So really quickly, I'll just go through the front end, and then I'll dive into some of the code, some of the highlights that I want to show you guys. So we'll refresh here. So we'll start off with this dashboard page here. Basically, by default, it'll show you one of the pro players on chess.com. His name's Hikaru, just for when you first log into the site. And we have this overall button here, which we can change the time classes to view all of his rapid games, blitz games, bullet games, daily games. So if we click rapid, it will then spit back to us only rapid games, and this shows you draws, wins, losses, and this shows you like your rating overall. And we can also use this table down here to sort like by the most total games played, win rate, draws, losses. You can sort by all of these things. And up here, we'll create an account. If we try to log in with an account that doesn't exist, I just type in something at gmail.com and then some random password. It'll say I failed to log in, so let's create an account. Let's make the password's password. Sign up now, and it'll take you back to the login page, so we can then sign in as our new user. And click login. It's a very basic account, but basically what it lets you do in here is you can just save your username, so you don't have to type it in every time. So we'll just use my username, and we click update username, and you can see stats will update correctly. I just don't have a lot of games played, that's why it looks a little weird. But you can go through all these time settings, and same thing as before, everything works. So this page is really the bulk of the project. If we want to sign out, we can do that too. And it'll just ask us to log in again. But some of the other pages, I just built them out anyways. They're really simple. Like for here, we have some tabs that go through some chess principles with React Bootstrap accordion. Rules is just a static page with some text. These openings pages, these are embedded from chess.com, and it lets you actually play out the opening so you can see. And if you want to learn it, you just click here. I'll open it in a new tab, and it'll take you to that opening page. And same with intermediate and advanced, it just shows you some different openings, as well as an FAQ here, which uses another Bootstrap accordion. All right, and then we also have a privacy policy, terms and conditions, and an about page. So diving into some of the tech, basically, starting with app.js, we have just our React Router, which routes us to our multiple pages, so I won't really spend too much time about how that works, but the dashboard is where I really want to spend most of my time talking. Basically, dashboard.jsx here is just all of these different components you see stored onto this one page, and starting with the switch statement, it'll go through and grab the relevant data, which I'll talk about in a second, depending on which time class we choose from this drop-down button, and that's how that works. We have a few different pieces of state here, talking about the time, the name for the player, some of the stats, info for white if you're playing white, info for black, and then some of your opening info, which is these openings down here. And then down here at the bottom, we're just rendering out all these graphs, all these other components. So if I go over to this elo chart here, we'll show you how this works. Basically, it'll go through, we create this giant object that shows you all the possible like data values that could be incremented, and we also have these empty arrays, which is where I store all this elo data here, which is like your rank basically. It just goes through, it checks to make sure that which of the two players is you, and then it pushes the correct like elo data for each game. And then the rest of this object here basically just goes through and shows you all the different scenarios stats-wise that you could have. Looking back at our elochart.jsx file, it'll basically check to make sure that the game is rated, and it'll say if you have more than 100 games played recently in the last 90 days here, we don't want to display too much data, so this basically will map through all of your games if you have less than 100 played, and if you have more than 100 played, it'll map through the most recent 100 games and display them on this graph here. We then take all that data from that object that I was talking about in here, and it basically just checks certain conditions, and that's what tells it to either increment or leave alone all these different object properties here. This runs through here, and it'll basically return the data from that object, and that's how we're seeing this. Up next, I'll talk about this table component here, which is pretty cool. So there's a lot of different openings in chess, as you can see. We can scroll down. So something that I managed to do here, basically all these games are stored in an object, or an array, sorry. All these different openings are stored in this massive array. These are just the most popular openings, and then we map through that array to create an object for each of them. And the way we increment the data for this object is a little bit more concise in the stats file. Basically, these for loops will go through a certain amount of these conditions here, and it basically just checks like if certain conditions are true, then we increment that by 1. And then we also have down here we have win rates that are calculated, and that's where those come from. So one of the largest challenges I had with this project was definitely the idea of lifting the state up and sharing it between all these components. I really didn't understand how that worked at first, but we have this dashboard, and we have all these pieces of state here with React hooks, and they're just passed down as props here, and that's how all these components talk to each other basically. And a problem that I've been running into more and more as I've been building out the app more was managing all the state, because there's a lot of state in this app, and it's becoming a lot mentally to deal with, and it's becoming more and more complex. So definitely in the future, I want to use like a use reducer and use context hook. You can see I actually did a little bit of that here. I started playing around with use context because with the login component, when you set a username, we need to pass it down from the login component down to this display and down all these graphs, which was I would have had to share this state all the way from app, which I just wasn't going to do. And just really quickly, one more thing I want to go over, which I thought was kind of cool, was the sidebar component. When I first built the app, we actually hard-coded all these different sidebar pieces in, but instead what I do now is I store if I go into here, I store just the sidebar information in an object, and then we basically just map through that object, and that's what returns the sidebar. So thank you guys for watching this demo. Really just one more thing I want to go over is, I know it's a lot to go over all of this in a 5-minute video, so if you want to see more of like my thought process and all of how this thing was built, I've actually been storing like a little TXT file here just where I've been tracking like all my progress and writing down what I've done when I've done it throughout all these different versions that I've committed to GitHub. So if there's any questions about like why I did certain things, you can probably find it in here. But other than that, that's about it. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good day.